Welcome back. We are on to a new story now. Mandy Stadtmiller says her entire life has been defined by sex. She calls herself a sex and love addict, and she's not sure what you can do to control it anymore, or maybe you do know. Mandy, my understanding is you've had a long polygenerational history of this sort of thing, right? You were born out of wedlock.
No.
No.
What I say is that I kind of have the mistress trifecta because I have a lot of empathy for people who have affairs because my father was given up for adoption as a result of an affair with a married man. So I wouldn't exist if that affair hadn't happened.
Right.
And then when I was married, my ex-husband cheated on me, and I always thought women who did that were scum, and then
because of what had happened to your family, you felt strongly about it?
No, I just was devastated to be lied to and kind of humiliated like that.
Right.
And I just never thought I would be that kind of woman. And then I ended up having an affair with a married man. So
you went from being angry and disgusted with that kind of woman to becoming that kind of woman.
Yeah. And I only recently, I have over like 2 years sobriety, and I was really partying a lot when I did that.
So that was part of your addiction back then?
Yeah.
So that, and is often the case, is people can really make horrible choices in their relationships when they're in their addiction disease. And in fact, in part of the treatment, you have to deal with your sexual improprieties and making amends and things. But sometimes what happens when people get sober, sex addiction steps in. Is that what happened with you?
Yeah, I started sexually acting out, and I was really reluctant to identify that way because, like, the joke that I made is my therapist always says I kind of deflect with humor. So, but it's just that, you know.
What would you say?
It was easier to say that I was an alcoholic, but saying I was a sex and love addict was like saying I was part of Tall Blondes Anonymous, because it like hit kind of close to home, you know.
Yeah. More
because
painful.
I just feel like there's and it was only when I really realized that, you know, it didn't have to mean you were, you know, at a ridiculous degree like prostituting yourself or something.
It can go there. It can go there.
Yeah, well, it didn't. Although, I mean, one time I did. That was like a really low point. Like, I definitely flirted with that on Craigslist. I said I was like looking for someone to like help with, you know. Yeah, exactly. And I was just like, what the F am I doing?
Was that your bottom? Was that the bottom?
No.
So in spite of nearly coming to prostitution, it got worse. It got worse.
Oh my God, my parents are going to be so proud. But I didn't. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm trying to like have a healthier view, because I think I've written about this on, I write about my life for exojane.com, and I wrote about losing my virginity to rape when I was 15 from a kind of distant family member, and I feel like that's defined a lot of my life. Is just
and that's a very common heritage. Women that have sexual compulsions, is that a rape or sexual abuse in childhood, those sorts of experiences, they can get reenacted compulsively, which is sort of crazy making. Let me ask you this, Mandy. You say the infidelity is, trying to solve infidelity is like the war on drugs, that it'll never happen.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that I think something broke inside me when I found out about some of the affairs that my ex-husband had, and I now come to it with like kind of a more realist viewpoint, like that if I got married again, I wouldn't necessarily even expect like my ex-husband to be 100% faithful. I feel kind of jaded.
Isn't that sad?
Yeah, it is sad.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, at least you'd like to hold guys to a higher standard. And
I
women, too.
would, yeah. And I think, I mean, and when you said, like, you know, what have I been doing lately, like, I feel like I've had some, like, meaningless sexual encounters that have just made me end up feeling empty. And, like, when I've been really depressed, like,
Mandy,
I,
what are we going to do about this?
what? I thought you were going to like hug me for a second.
Well, I wouldn't be so presumptuous, but let me just say, there's help out there. Are you reaching out for help?
Yeah.
You said therapy.
Yeah.
You're doing any of the 12-step type?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I haven't really gotten like a sponsor in SSLA, and I have trouble kind of figuring out like what the problem is when you're sober, like sex is kind of the one last vice that you have.
Well,
You look like you were going to slap my hand right
I will
then.
not. That's all your projections. I feel bad that you're going through this, but let me just say, sobriety is about being sober and honest about everything, not leaving one little door open because that's still where the disease crawls through.
Right.
Mandy, we'll continue to read your story. It's xojane.com. Is that right?
Yeah.
I'll be looking. This is your story. This is it.
Yeah.
We're catching you midway in your resolution of all these things. I'm glad you want to hold people to a higher standard.
Thank
you
you.
haven't given up. Don't give up yet.